Now I'll tell you 5 of the scariest stories that have happened to people on the road. If you can listen to all of these stories, then you're truly prepared to face any horror that awaits people in the most unexpected places. Good luck. On a freezing November night in 2019, Michael Carson made a decision that would haunt him forever. Driving alone on a forgotten back road outside Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, he spotted a figure standing motionless at the roadside, a young woman in nothing but a thin coat, her breath visible in the frigid air. Against every instinct screaming at him to keep driving, Michael pulled over. What happened in the next 15 minutes would make him question everything he thought he knew about the world. Michael had been returning from a late work shift, taking the rural route to avoid highway traffic. The road was narrow, bordered by dense woods on both sides, with no streetlights for miles. His headlights were the only illumination, cutting through the darkness. It was just past midnight when he saw her pale skin almost glowing in the blackness, standing perfectly still near a rusted mailbox. He slowed the car and rolled down the passenger window. The woman looked to be in her early 20s, with long dark hair and eyes that seemed unfocused, distant. She wore a light blue coat, completely inappropriate for the bitter cold. Michael asked if she needed help. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "The cemetery, please. I need to go to the old cemetery." Something felt wrong. The air suddenly grew colder, even with the heater running full blast. But the woman looked so lost, so fragile, that Michael unlocked the doors. She climbed into the back seat without another word, settling in with an unsettling stillness. Michael glanced in the rearview mirror. She sat rigid, hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead. The drive to the old Evergreen cemetery took about 10 minutes. Michael tried making conversation, asking her name, if she was okay, if someone was waiting for her. She never answered. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the occasional creak of the car's suspension on the uneven road. Then Michael noticed something else, a faint, sweet smell filling the car. Roses. Fresh roses. Impossibly fragrant in the dead of winter. He checked the mirror again. The woman hadn't moved an inch. Her skin looked even paler now, almost translucent in the dashboard's glow. Her breathing, if she was breathing at all, was completely silent. Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel as an inexplicable dread settled over him. The cemetery gates appeared ahead, iron bars twisted with age, barely visible against the darkness. Michael pulled the car to a stop just outside the entrance. "We're here," he said, his voice cracking slightly. Silence. He turned around to face the back seat. It was empty. The woman was gone. Completely, impossibly gone. The doors were still locked. The windows hadn't been opened. Michael's heart hammered against his ribs as he checked every inch of the car under the seats. In the footwells, nothing. Just that lingering scent of roses, slowly fading into the cold night air. Shaken, Michael drove straight to a 24-hour diner in town. The waitress, an older woman named Helen, listened to his story with knowing eyes. "Blue coat?" she asked quietly. "Dark hair?" Taking her to Evergreen. When Michael nodded, Helen sighed. "You're not the first. That girl's been hitching that road for 40 years. Sarah Winters died in a car accident right where you picked her up 1979. Winter night, just like this one. They buried her in Evergreen. She's still trying to get home." Michael never took that back road again. He moved away from Gettysburg 6 months later. But some nights he still wakes up smelling rosy sweet, impossible, and cold. Local drivers continue to report the same pale woman standing by that rusted mailbox, always on the coldest nights of the year. And the old cemetery groundskeeper has a standing rule: never unlock the gates after midnight. Because sometimes, he says, the dead don't realize they're already home. What terrifies most isn't the disappearance itself, it's the question of how many times she's made that same silent journey, trapped further in the moment before her death. For nearly a century, drivers along Chicago's Arch Avenue have encountered a woman who shouldn't exist. She appears on the darkest stretches of road, always wearing a white dress, always asking for the same destination. And when the car passes Resurrection Cemetery's iron gates, she vanishes without a trace. This is the story of Jerry Palace, a cab driver who picked up Resurrection Mary in 1977 and lived to tell a tale that would make him a believer in the impossible. Jerry had been driving cabs in Chicago for 15 years, and he thought he'd seen it all. Drunks, criminals, celebrities, lovers, fighters, every type of human story. But nothing prepared him for the night of March 10, 1977, when he picked up a fare outside the old O. Henry Ballroom on Arch Avenue. It was nearly 2 a.m. Light rain misted the streets, creating halos around the street lamps. Jerry had just dropped off his last passenger and was considering calling it a night, when he saw her, a young woman in a white cocktail dress, standing alone on the sidewalk. No coat, no purse, no umbrella. Just standing there in the rain, looking lost. He pulled over. She climbed into the back seat without hesitation, and immediately Jerry felt the temperature inside the cab plummet. His breath became visible. The woman gave him an address on the south side, speaking in a soft, musical voice that seemed to come from far away. Jerry turned up the heat, but the cold only intensified. As they drove down Arch Avenue, Jerry tried making small talk. She responded in short, distant sentences. She'd been dancing, she said, at the ballroom. She needed to get home. Her voice had a strange quality, detached, dreamy, as if she were describing someone else's life. Jerry glanced in the rearview mirror. The woman's dress was damp, clinging to her thin frame. Her blonde hair hung in wet strands. But what disturbed him most were her eyes, empty, unfocused, staring out the window at the passing darkness. Then came the smell. Perfume, old-fashioned and heavy, mixing with something else, something earthy and damp, like freshly turned soil. Jerry's stomach tightened. The radio began to crackle with static despite the clear night. The streetlights seemed to dim as they approached a particular stretch of road. Resurrection Cemetery appeared on the right, acres of graves behind ornate iron gates, monuments casting long shadows in the darkness. Jerry felt an overwhelming urge to drive faster, to get past this place. But then the woman spoke, her voice suddenly sharp and clear. Here. Stop here. Jerry glanced back. The woman was staring at the cemetery gates with an expression he couldn't read, longing, perhaps, or recognition. He slowed the cab. You sure? This is just there. He stopped mid-sentence. The back seat was empty. The door hadn't opened. The locks hadn't clicked. But the woman in white was gone, as if she'd never been there at all. Only the faint scent of old perfume and damp earth remained, along with wet footprints on the floor, mat footprints that seemed to fade, even as Jerry stared at them. Later, Jerry learned the story every Chicago cab driver whispers to rookies. Mary Bregovy, a young woman killed in a car accident near the ballroom in 1934, buried in Resurrection Cemetery in a white dress. Dozens of drivers have reported the same encounter: the woman in white, the freezing cold, the disappearance at the cemetery gates. Some claim to have seen her walking inside the cemetery grounds, her figure glowing faintly in the moonlight. Jerry Palace never picked up another late-night fare on Arch Avenue. He quit driving cabs altogether within a year, unable to shake the memory of those empty eyes and that impossible cold. The O. Henry Ballroom has long since closed, but on foggy nights, witnesses still report a woman in a white dress standing outside its boarded-up entrance, waiting for a ride that will always end the same way. Resurrection Cemetery's caretakers have stopped being surprised by the reports. They've learned to simply nod and say, "Mary's out again," as if death were just another shift that never ends. The true horror lies not in the ghost's appearance, but in her eternal routine, forever reliving the journey home she never completed, trapped between the dance and the grave. There's a stretch of Highway 95 in the Nevada desert where speed limits mean nothing. Because sometimes, the thing chasing you isn't bound by the laws of physics. In August 2016, truck driver Raymond Cole experienced 17 minutes of pure terror as headlights appeared behind him on an empty road, accelerating to impossible speeds, then vanishing into darkness. What he discovered later about that stretch of highway would explain everything and nothing at all. Raymond had been hauling freight through Nevada for 23 years. He knew every mile of Highway 95, every truck stop, every lonely stretch where the desert opened up into endless darkness. The run between Reno and Las Vegas was routine 8 hours of flat highway, scattered sagebrush, and nothing but static on the radio. He'd done it hundreds of times without incident. That night, Raymond left Tonopah just after 11 p.m. The moon was a thin crescent, providing almost no light. His truck's headlights carved a tunnel through the blackness, illuminating the yellow center line and not much else. The highway was completely deserted. He hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. Then, at mile marker 167, Raymond noticed lights in his side mirror, two bright headlights, appearing out of nowhere, perhaps half a mile back. At first he felt relief. Company on this lonely stretch was welcome. But within seconds, relief turned to unease. The lights were approaching fast. Too fast. Raymond checked his speedometer. He was doing 70. These lights were closing the gap like he was standing still. Raymond moved to the right lane, assuming the vehicle wanted to pass. But the lights stayed directly behind him, matching his position. They grew larger, brighter, until they filled his mirrors with blinding white light. Raymond's pulse quickened. He pressed the accelerator, pushing the truck to 80, then 85. The lights kept pace effortlessly. The desert stretched endlessly on both sides. No towns, no exits, no places to pull over. Just flat emptiness and darkness. Raymond's hands gripped the wheel as the lights began to pulse, growing brighter and dimmer in a rhythm that made his head ache. His radio erupted in harsh static. The temperature inside the cab dropped sharply, and Raymond's breath came out in visible puffs despite the warm desert night. He tried to get a better look at the vehicle through his mirrors, but the lights were too intense, obscuring everything behind them. No headlight pattern matched what he was seeing, just two perfect circles of white light, unwavering and impossibly bright. Raymond's mind raced. Was this some kind of law enforcement? A drunk driver? Something else entirely? At 90 miles per hour, with his truck shaking from the speed, Raymond made a desperate decision. He slammed on the brakes, hoping the vehicle would swerve around him. The lights grew massive in his mirrors, about to collide with his trailer. Raymond braced for impact. Nothing happened. The lights simply vanished. 1 second they were there, filling his cab with white light. The next, complete darkness. Raymond brought the truck to a shuddering stop on the shoulder, his heart hammering. He jumped out, flashlight in hand, and checked the entire length of the highway in both directions. Nothing. Not a single vehicle. Not even dust in the air. Just silence and darkness and the endless desert. The next morning, shaken and exhausted, Raymond stopped at a truck stop near Hawthorne. An older mechanic named Gene listened to his story, then walked Raymond to a map on the wall. He pointed to mile marker 167. "You're not the first," Gene said quietly. "That stretch there back in 1959, a couple in a convertible lost control at high speed. Car exploded on impact. Both died instantly. Ever since, drivers report the same thing. Lights that chase you, impossibly fast, then vanish. Some say it's them still racing down that road. Others say it's worse, that the crash left something behind. Something that hunts." Raymond Cole still drives freight, but he plans his routes to avoid Highway 95 after dark. Other drivers aren't so lucky. Reports continue to surface every few months. Some claim the phantom lights have forced them off the road. Others describe a sense of malevolent intelligence behind the pursuit, as if whatever creates those lights is testing them, playing with them. The old crash site near mile marker 167 is still visible from the highway. Twisted metal and scorched earth that never quite grew back. And on the darkest nights, when the moon is just a sliver in the sky, those lights appear again. Chasing. Always chasing. What haunts the mind isn't just the chase itself, it's the realization that some forces on empty roads aren't trying to pass you. They're hunting you. Route 66 is known as America's Mother Road, but some stretches are better left forgotten. Outside Gallup, New Mexico, a burned-down motel stands as a monument to tragedy and to one girl who never left. In 2014, photographer Lisa Chen stopped to take pictures of the ruins at sunset. What she encountered in the fading light would make her question whether the past ever truly dies, or if some souls are condemned to relive their final moments forever. Lisa had been documenting abandoned Route 66 landmarks for months, chasing the fading ghost of mid-century America. The old desert Rose Motel outside Gallup was perfect, crumbling neon sign, shattered windows, and that haunting quality of places where time had simply stopped. She arrived around 6 p.m., the autumn sun casting long orange shadows across the desert. The motel had burned in 1956, according to local records. A gas leak, followed by an explosion that killed 3 people, including a teenage girl named Rebecca Martinez, who'd been working the front desk. The structure had never been rebuilt, just left to rot in the desert heat. Lisa set up her camera, capturing the way dying sunlight pierced through the collapsed roof. That's when she saw her, a young woman, maybe 17 or 18, standing near what used to be the motel entrance. She wore a pink waitress-style dress, bobby socks, and saddle shoes straight out of the 1950s. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she was smiling, waving at Lisa as if trying to get her attention. Lisa's first thought was that someone else was here, maybe another photographer doing a period shoot, but something felt wrong. The girl's clothing looked too authentic, too worn, and she was standing in a spot where part of the roof had collapsed. Lisa could see clear through to the sky behind her. The girl called out, her voice carrying clearly across the empty lot. "Excuse me, could you give me a ride into town? My shift ended hours ago." Her accent was pure 1950s Southwest, the kind Lisa had only heard in old movies. Lisa's skin prickled. The temperature seemed to drop despite the warm evening. Against her better judgment, Lisa walked closer. The girl maintained her smile, but her eyes were wrong, too bright, too fixed, as if she were looking at something just beyond Lisa, rather than at her directly. "I work here," the girl continued, gesturing at the ruins, "at the Desert Rose, but my ride didn't show up. Do you think you could take me to Gallup? It's not far." Lisa's mouth went dry. The girl was describing the motel as if it still stood intact, as if the char marks and collapsed walls didn't exist. "This place, it burned down," Lisa said carefully, "a long time ago." The girl's smile never wavered, but her image began to flicker, like a film projector stuttering. "I know," she said softly. "I was here when it happened. I can still smell the smoke." And then Lisa did smell it, acrid, choking smoke, filling her lungs despite the clear desert air. Heat washed over her face, and for a terrifying moment, she saw the motel as it must have been that night in 1956, flames roaring through the structure, windows exploding, someone screaming. Lisa stumbled backward, coughing, her eyes watering. When she looked up again, the girl was walking toward her car, parked 50 feet away. Not walking exactly, gliding, her feet not quite touching the ground. "Please," the girl said, her voice now tinged with desperation. "I just want to go home. I've been waiting so long." Lisa ran. She didn't think, didn't reason, just ran for her car, fumbling with her keys. Behind her, she heard the girl calling, her voice growing fainter and sadder. "Please don't leave me here. Please. It's so lonely." Lisa drove 5 miles before she dared to check her rearview mirror. The back seat was empty, but the smell of smoke lingered in the car for days afterward. And when she finally developed her photos from that evening, one image made her blood run cold. In the background of a shot she'd taken before seeing the girl, there was a figure visible through one of the motel's shattered windows. Pink dress, dark ponytail, standing exactly where Lisa had first seen her. But this photo had been taken 15 minutes earlier before anyone should have been there at all. Lisa never returned to that stretch of Route 66. The Desert Rose Motel still stands, or what's left of it, and locals warn travelers not to stop there after sunset. They say Rebecca Martinez is still waiting for someone to take her home, still living in the moment before the flames took her life. Other drivers have reported seeing her over the decades, always wearing that pink dress, always asking for a ride to town, always vanishing before they reach the city limits. Some say her voice can be heard on quiet nights, carried on the desert wind, asking the same question she's been asking for nearly 70 years. Could you give me a ride? The deepest horror isn't her appearance, but her hope, the possibility that she still believes each new traveler might finally be the one to break her loop and take her somewhere the dead cannot go. The coastal road between Bar Harbor and Acadia National Park is breathtaking by day, but at night, it becomes a death trap. For decades, drivers have reported mysterious headlights appearing on the wrong side of the narrow cliffside road, drifting slowly toward them, luring them toward the rocky drop below. In October 2018, newlyweds David and Emma Torres encountered these lights on what should have been a romantic evening drive. What happened in the next 10 minutes nearly ended their lives and revealed a pattern of tragedy that spans generations. David and Emma had rented a cabin near Bar Harbor for their honeymoon, seeking the autumn beauty of coastal Maine. On their third evening, they decided to drive to a seaside restaurant in Acadia, taking the scenic coastal route despite the late hour. It was just after 10 p.m. when they left. The road ahead lit only by their headlights and the occasional glimpse of moonlight, reflecting off the Atlantic far below. The road was treacherous, barely wide enough for two cars, with hairpin turns and no guardrails in many sections. A sheer rock face rose on one side, while the other dropped away into darkness, falling hundreds of feet to jagged rocks and crashing waves. David drove carefully, his hands tight on the wheel. Emma gazed out at the occasional view of the ocean, feeling peaceful despite the dangerous road. Then, rounding a particularly sharp curve, they saw them. Two headlights, appearing ahead on their side of the road. Not bright and modern, but dim and yellowish, like old sealed beam lights from decades past. The lights weren't moving quickly, they drifted slowly, almost floating, swaying gently from side to side, as if the vehicle were wandering between lanes. David immediately slowed down, assuming another car was approaching. "They're on the wrong side," Emma said, her voice tense. David flashed his high beams, signaling the other driver to correct their position. The lights didn't change course. They continued drifting directly toward them, now maybe 200 yards away and closing. "What are they doing?" Emma whispered. David pulled as far right as he could, his passenger side tires inches from the cliff's edge. Pebbles tumbled into the darkness below. The approaching lights grew larger, but remained on the wrong side, still swaying with that unsettling drift. David honked his horn, a long, desperate blast that echoed off the rock face. The lights didn't react. 100 yards now. David could see the lights more clearly, too far apart for a normal car, too dim for modern headlights, and there was nothing else visible. No grille, no windshield reflection, no shadow of a vehicle body. Just those two yellow lights, floating in the darkness, pulling them forward like a magnet. "David, back up," Emma said urgently. But there was no room. Another sharp curve behind them, and backing up blind on this road was suicide. The lights were 50 yards away now, and David felt something he'd never experienced before, a compulsion to drive forward, to meet those lights, to follow them. His foot pressed the accelerator without him consciously deciding to do so. "David, what are you doing?" Emma grabbed the wheel. The spell broke. David slammed the brakes, and their car screeched to a stop. The phantom lights were now just 20 feet away, and in that moment, Both David and Emma saw something that would haunt them forever. The lights weren't attached to any vehicle. They hung in the air, pulsing gently. And beyond them, beyond where they should have been, was only the cliff edge and empty space. The lights were floating over the drop-off, trying to lead them over the edge. Emma screamed. David threw the car into reverse and backed up wildly, not caring about the curves behind them, desperate to put distance between them and those impossible lights. When he looked forward again, the lights were gone. Completely, utterly vanished. Only darkness remained, and the sound of waves crashing on rocks far below. They drove straight to the local police station. The officer on duty, a weathered man named Sheriff Curtis, listened to their story with weary recognition. He pulled out a thick file folder, spreading photographs and reports across his desk. "You're lucky," he said quietly. "You listened to your instinct. Others haven't been so fortunate." The file documented decades of accidents on that stretch of road, cars found at the bottom of cliffs, drivers who claimed to have been following lights before losing control, and consistent reports of phantom headlights appearing on foggy or dark nights. Sheriff Curtis explained the local theory. A driver in the 1940s had gone over the cliff during a storm, his car tumbling hundreds of feet before exploding on the rocks. Since then, the lights appear, always drifting toward the cliff's edge, always on the wrong side of the road. Some say it's the driver's ghost, still wandering in confusion. Others believe something darker, that the lights are predatory, actively hunting for victims to join them in the darkness below. David and Emma left Maine the next day, their honeymoon cut short by an experience they still struggle to explain. The coastal road remains open, and tourists continue to drive it for the spectacular views. But locals know to avoid it after dark, and fishermen working the waters below the cliffs report sometimes seeing lights falling through the darkness, tumbling down toward the rocks only to vanish before impact. The accidents continue, one or two each year, always on moonless nights, always with drivers who claim they were following lights that shouldn't have been there. And if you drive that road yourself, some piece of advice from Sheriff Curtis: if you see headlights drifting toward you on the wrong side of the road, close your eyes. Don't follow them. Because once you start following, the lights will lead you exactly where they want you to go, over the edge, and into the darkness that has no end. What terrifies most is the intentionality. These aren't residual hauntings but active laws, suggesting intelligence behind the lights, something that wants company in its endless fall. So there you have it, 5 encounters on America's roads that science can't explain, and common sense can't accept. The vanishing hitchhiker seeking her eternal rest, Resurrection Mary, forever dancing toward the grave, the phantom car racing through Nevada's darkness, Rebecca, still waiting outside the burned motel, and those predatory lights on Maine's cliffs, hunting for victims to pull into the abyss. Which story disturbed you the most? Was it the disappearing passengers, the impossible chase, or something else entirely? Drop a comment below and let me know. And here's my question for you. Have you ever experienced something on a lonely road that you couldn't explain? Lights, figures, or sounds that shouldn't have been there? Share your story. You might not be as alone as you think. If these tales kept you up tonight, hit that subscribe button for more real accounts of the unexplained. Leave a like if you dare to drive alone after dark again. And remember, the next time you're on an empty road and something doesn't feel right, trust that instinct. Because some passengers never reach their destination. Some lights lead nowhere you want to go. And some roads, once traveled, change you forever.